Hello there, and welcome to this essay writing masterclass. So if you're preparing to resit or you just want a refresher, this is a short presentation, which is just going to cover the absolute basics. If you get these right, and you've read the text, you have interesting thoughts about the text, you'll be onto a winner. But if you get these basics right, this is going to get you quite a long way. So the first thing to remember is what an essay actually is. Always remember the key skill you're learning and demonstrating is the ability to formulate and articulate literary criticism. Now, that sounds like an obvious statement, but if you can position yourself mentally in terms of thinking of yourself as a literary critic, that's going to eliminate a lot of arguments that won't work. That's going to eliminate a lot of potential for digression or missing the point. Like everything you write in this essay should count as literary criticism. But what is that? So a critic is a person who engages professionally in the analysis, evaluation, or appreciation of a work of art, artistic performance. So there's a couple of key words there. Professionalism. So you are doing professional criticism. So it's not about subjective opinion. It's about you following a methodology to make professional claims in a professional way about a text. This includes things like formatting and presentation and expression and making the essay actually look like it belongs in an academic journal. Like this should look like a professional piece of writing. In terms of the actual content of the writing, you're analyzing, you're evaluating, and you're thinking about appreciating how the text works. So anything that isn't those shouldn't really be in the essay. A critic communicates an assessment of and opinion on creative works, but that's a professional opinion. It's an opinion that you're able to convey to us that you've reached by following a certain protocol. That's what makes someone or something professional. Now, essays aren't just assessment types that we invent, in the way that, SATs or A-levels or something, they invent particular kinds of exam scripts, don't they? That's not what the essay is. The essay is actually a literary form, and it has a genre and a history, and it dates all the way back to classical rhetoric. So much like, the history of the sonnet includes figures like Shakespeare and Petrarch and, all of the other sonnet writers that you've encountered. The essay is a literary form, and it starts, if you all go all the way back to the classical world, to ancient Greece, it starts as an oral tradition, a spoken tradition. So people arguing in an amphitheatre. And what they were supposed to do, the way to win one of those verbal arguments was to synthesize persuasion, eloquence, argument, and debate. So again, you're a professional, you're analyzing, you're evaluating, you're appreciating, but also you're persuading. So you're trying to make someone think what you think. You're using eloquence to do that. So eloquence is where something becomes persuasive because of the way that it's written, the way that it's presented. It's an argument. It has to have a structure, and you're debating something. So you're engaging with another point of view. That great century, the 18th century, saw the emergence of something called the periodical essay. So these were serialized publications. That means they would come out every week, every month, often even days apart, which would present distinct opinions on different issues with each installment, but not just like random half-baked opinions, like opinions that are grounded in evaluation, analysis, and persuasion. So when some of these periodicals, which are like magazines, took as their subject recent works of literature and the debates that surrounded them, we have this new form, the literary essay, which is born. So essays about literature. So when you write a literary essay, you're engaging in a tradition that encompasses figures like Samuel Johnson, William Hazlitt, Mary Wollstonecraft, Virginia Woolf, and can still be found in the pages of literary periodicals or magazines, such as the Times Literary Supplement, often referred to as the TLS, or the London Review of Books, the LRB. You can go into Dubwaite Smith's, or the newsagents are available, and you can buy magazines full of literary essays, the exact genre that you're trying to write in these assessments. So what's the point of an essay? An essay is designed to convincingly convey an idea, and in literary criticism, this is usually an interpretation in a way that is logical, reasonable, and that seems indisputable. So you're trying to make your reader agree with you, but more than that, you're trying to make them think that your interpretation of the text is the only viable, real interpretation of the text. So your essay should still be built on your idea, and it should be clear how everything you include advances your idea. And we call this idea your premise. So there should therefore be a clear reason, or as we say, a clear rationale for everything that you write in your essay. Every single word should service this rationale, this premise. So if you're offering a close reading of the text, it should be obvious how your observations contribute to the development of your idea. If you're engaging with the work of another critic, a secondary source, it should be clear how this furthers the premise of your essay. So your idea, it doesn't actually need to be that complicated, that complex to begin with. It's not actually a straightforward task to present a simple idea in such a way that it is beyond dispute, and often the attempt to corroborate a simple idea will reveal that the idea itself is far more complicated than you initially realized. So the best essays are written with a hostile reader in mind. So you should imagine, obviously we're all friendly tutors, but you should imagine that the person who's reading this wants to take you down. You should imagine that they want to find the holes in your argument, that they want to undermine you, that they want to unpick you, that they want to dismantle what you're claiming and prove that you're wrong. Imagine that's the person that you're arguing with. So if you imagine that you're entering into a kind of like a battle of wits, and your assailant, the opposite person, will be looking for holes in your argument, faulty logic, and alternative interpretation, then you'll find that the essay you write should be tightly secured to defend against these attacks. And lo and behold, you will have written a very good essay. So in terms of the actual bread and butter of this essay, the basics, if you like, the first thing is you need an introductory paragraph. So the introduction, remember when you're writing it, what the introduction is actually for. So the point of the introduction is to signal to the reader what it is that you're going to be doing in the essay, to provide the rationale for what follows, and it should end with your thesis statement. This is a buzzword, like a piece of terminology that we use to refer to the couple of sentences where you say what it is that you'll be arguing and why. So I should be able to just read the introduction of your essay, and I should immediately know why you've written the essay, what it's about, what you're arguing, and I should have access to all the key context and information that I need to understand what it is that you're arguing. The introduction then leads on to your body paragraphs. This is where the main business of the essay happens, where the argument happens. So in these paragraphs, you'll share your analysis of the primary text, you'll share your engagement with and interrogation of existing scholarship, which we often refer to as secondary sources, and each paragraph should be a distinct step in your argument. So if you remember that each paragraph is a little bit of a bigger argument, that should help you also not only to structure the argument, but to remember to figure out when to break into a new paragraph. So everything in one paragraph should be related to everything else in that paragraph. If you're including something different to what you originally started out with in that paragraph, it's time for a new paragraph. So each paragraph should open with a topic sentence, which signals to the reader which step in the argument this will be. So when you're reading academic articles or secondary scholarship, as we might call it, secondary sources, if you're speed reading it to quickly get a sense of what's in the article, a good tip is to look at the thesis statement. So that's the end of the, well, actually, look at the first line of the article, which should set the scene. Look at the thesis statement, which normally comes towards the end of the introductory section, and then have a look at the first line of each paragraph, because what the academic who's written that article should be doing is like spelling out, mapping the article through their topic sentences. So if you get in the habit of doing that when you're reading secondary sources, and then remember to do it when you're writing your essays. So, I should be able to take the end of the introduction, the first line of every paragraph, and get a basic sense of what the essay is about. And then I'll read it properly to see what your analysis is for the claims that you're making in all these topic sentences. And then finally, you've got your conclusion. This is where we get to the end of the essay. So if you imagine that you are a lawyer presenting a prosecution or defense case in a court, and this is the bit where you're going to win over the jury. You've presented your argument, you've presented all your evidence, and this is the bit where you're going to seal the deal and make them agree with you. So in your conclusion, you emphatically state your answer to the question, reflecting on the essay that's come to light reflecting on the evidence that's come to light during the process of the essay. A strong essay will revisit the opening premise and demonstrate that not only has it delivered all that it promised it was going to do, but this premise has been advanced upon during the process, revealing even further implications. So this is where you really get a feel for the fact that the essay is a literary genre, because there's an element of fiction here. There's an idea that you and I, the author and the reader, have learned something through this process. And not only were you right to begin with, but you've proven a whole set of other ways in which you're right along the way. So if we're going to dig down into this into a little bit more detail, there are a couple of instances I've already alluded to that we want to get absolutely right. And one of those is the very first line of the essay. Now, some people in essays that don't get high scores just sort of like reword the essay question as their opening line. I can see the impulse, but there's a better way to do it. So the opening line of the essay should acknowledge what it is that the essay is going to be doing. So what, in one sentence, what is the point of this essay? What are you arguing? Where does it fit into the world? If you have a question, an essay question that you're answering, it should engage directly with that question, reassuring the reader that it recognizes the challenge it's been tasked with. Now, that's not just a case of rewording the actual question. That's kind of, in a sentence, where does my essay fit into responding to this question? Often you might not have been assigned a question, but you've been asked to develop your own title. So if you're doing that, the opening line should address the topic that you're interested in. So again, if your title is something like gender and genre in Frankenstein, your topic sentence, your opening sentence should quickly help me to understand what it is that you want to say about the relationship between gender and genre in Frankenstein. So the opening line doesn't need to answer the question, but it should seek to bring the reader into the topic of discussion and signal that the argument is coming. So it's a teaser, basically. You're whetting my appetite for what is to follow. And as I've already mentioned, as you get to the end of your introduction, there should be a thesis statement. So this is one or two lines that launch the reader into your essay from the springboard that is your argument. So in these 2-3 sentences, I should know exactly what you're arguing and why. This is where you state your idea. This is where you tell us really what your interpretation is, and you indicate how this relates to the question you've been asked of the topic of the essay. In a deeper dive into body paragraphs, so unless it's close reading, your essay should include all of these things: detailed and extensive textual analysis. Doesn't matter what the assessment is, you'll always need that. Relevant wider reading and research, and engagement and interrogation of relevant secondary sources, which are scholarly academic sources. So they have to be peer reviewed and ideally have been found using the library's database. So those are the three things that need to be happening all through the essay. In terms of your secondary sources, you're not just quoting from them to, you're not just getting critics to say your argument for you. You should be engaging with them, interrogating them. You need to do something with them and indicate to the reader how doing something with them is accelerating or developing your own argument. So as it says here, it's easier to demonstrate engagement with secondary sources if the engagement is genuine. So, like, engage with the sources because you genuinely want to know what the sources are saying and you're genuinely interested to develop your ideas. Don't like cherry pick them. So what you should never say is things like, I'm just going to the library to get my quotes. What you should say is, I'm going to go to the library to read some secondary sources, and through that process establish a more nuanced opinion on the text. Obviously people don't talk like that, but that is what you're doing. So do start with something that you actually think or want to know, and then find appropriate sources which you can test your idea against. Don't specifically seek out ways to criticize or disagree with sources or recast other scholars as straw figures. So this happens all the time, where students think the thing they're supposed to do with critics is disagree with them, and then they read the critics in a really bad faith way just so that they can put the boot in, and you don't get many ticks for that. So there's lots of things that you can do with a secondary source. So one, you can provide evidence that disputes their claims and advances your own. So if you find something they're saying and that actually doesn't align with your interpretation of the text, and you can prove it through close textual analysis, 100%, put that in. 100p, put that in. Provide evidence that complicates what they're saying. So in this version, you're not saying that the critic is wrong, but you're actually adding a further dimension to what they've said, which slightly complicates what they were saying. But often it might be, if these things are in peer review sources, 2 or 3 academics have agreed that what they're saying is legitimate. So perhaps it's more likely that you will actually agree with the critic. And in that case, that's fine. But something you can do is advance their point. So take something that they've said that you agree with, and then maybe apply that claim to a different bit of the text, your own bit of close reading, to build on it. So in that instance, you're applying something you agree with to the text, and you're demonstrating not only that you understood what the critic was saying because you're able to apply it, but also you're demonstrating your own analysis and textual close reading ability at the same time. So that's a really good thing to do. So just to sum that section up, things to think about to do well in terms of secondary research is think about why you're doing the research. Why are you looking up these articles? I know you're looking them up to meet the rubrics, to meet the modular learning outcomes, but also like, what is it that you personally want to get from, like, how is looking at this article going to help you? So think about that. Think about what you hope to gain from engaging with the source and how engaging with them is furthering your argument. So what can I get from this in terms of developing my own argument? Think of yourself as a critic engaging in existing and ongoing scholarly discussions. Don't think of yourself as a student writing an essay. So imagine these critics are people you might actually meet, and you can ask them questions and ask them to like qualify why they've said what they've said, then decide in your own time if you agree with them. And to do all of these, you need to be using appropriate sources for the right reasons. So finally, then, how do we bring this home? How do we wrap up this essay in your conclusion? So your conclusion is your last chance to sell your argument. So here you want to spell out to the reader how you've responded to the question and what your answer to the question task is. The reader should put down the essay and not only agree with you based on everything you presented, but ideally have been persuaded that your response is the best and only response to the question. So when you've drafted it, look at this slide, then look at that conclusion again. Is it doing that? Have you completely sold what it is that you're saying? And as I've already mentioned, so a tutor once said to me when I was a student, if you want to get a 2-1, your essay structure should go like this. Say what you're going to say it again. If you want to get a first, you should say what you're going to say it again, but then as part of the conclusion, demonstrate, what has been learned, gained, and advanced upon during that process. So as it says here, stronger essays will also highlight the ways in which the initial premise of the essay has been advanced upon, furthering the conceit, because this is a literary genre, that something has been learned along the way. So that's my essay writing masterclass, and I hope that was useful. And if you have any questions, please do give any of us a yell. Thanks very much for listening, and goodbye for now.